We're going to do Job 4 through 14 tonight. It's going to be greatest hits, 11 chapters that we're covering tonight. But we're not going to read the whole text. We're going to just do the highlights. I'm going to walk you through. That's why I give you the outline. So if you want to read all of the verses, you can, because it colors in the picture. And so if you want me to, I'm doing the reading for you, because I go over every verse carefully and see how it fits into the jigsaw puzzle. I wanted to tell you how to get us up to speed that basically you've got Job who's suffering, and he reasons that God gives and God takes away. He's lost a lot of things, and he lost his family. So it's suffering. And then he has this deep suffering where he has health issues, big time health issues, a skin disease that's causing boils to break out on him. And then he says we must accept the bad as well as the good from God. And then his wife brings up suicide as an option, and he says she's foolish for suggesting that. Well, Job's friends visit, okay, and they sit with him for a week. But as a result of their visit, he curses his very existence.
This isn't going well.
It isn't going well at all.
You know, Job is kind of right, though. I mean, God does give, but God allows it to be taken
Yes.
away sometimes, but it's not God taking it away.
Right. It is hard to distinguish the two, to say that God allows it and God does it. By his allowing it, in effect, he is doing it. But it's not his idea. In this case, it was not his idea. Again, we're neck deep in some thought here about the nature of God and what he knows and doesn't, what he knows and wants us to know about the situation. Then the friends try to make sense of Job's suffering. And this is where we begin tonight. So here's the deal. Job has all of these friends who come and visit him. They sit with him quietly for a week without saying anything. And you would think that Job was all grieved out. No. He cries out. He curses the day of his own birth. For all of those that have suffered, that have enjoyed birthdays, Mary and Jim, Job would have cursed his birthday. Mary and Jim just had birthdays. So he cursed the day of his birth. And so the friends, I am sure they meant well. Okay, I'm sure they did. But they decided this was an opportunity, since Job is not responding well to their silence, that maybe they need to speak up.
Pontificate.
Yes, they pontificated. It's tough, because right now he's really in no mood to be pontificated to. And I found that true when I'm in times of suffering. Probably the worst thing that you can do for me is to tell me what the answer is. Or what I did. Oh, I definitely don't want to hear what I did wrong. Okay. I got enough people telling me what I did wrong now. But especially when you're wounded. It'd be like being wounded on the battlefield and the guy says, you didn't load your rifle properly, I see. You're dying there, and I see you didn't duck. Thanks. That kind of thing.
That's what they talk about in the marriage classes, is about when you're interacting with your spouse, the woman doesn't want you to justify or give any kind of info, and she just wants you to listen while she pours her heart out to you.
Right.
Most of the time.
Right.
Where the men the other way around, we're trying to fix everything.
Right.
Getting deeper.
Well, we can by trying to fix it. These guys tried to fix it and made things worse. But fortunately for us, we have a good record of what happened and how they reasoned, and we can benefit from that. The next 3 weeks, starting tonight, there are actually 3 rounds of debates between Job's friends and Job. 3 rounds. We have Eliphaz, who's a Temanite. We have Bildad, who is a Shuhite. No jokes on how tall he was. Who was the smallest man in the Bible? Bildad the Shuhite. Very funny. No, he wasn't. It was the man who slept on his watch. Anyway, Old jokes. They've obviously been worn out on this crowd. So,
That was the shortest thing.
okay.
The smallest name was the soldier whose different was watched.
Okay. Well, anyway, and then you have a fellow by the name of Zophar. Okay, and all these guys have a little different way of looking at what's going on with Job. They all kind of give us an idea. We'll start to look at these. They're not just three guys just pitching ideas in there. They all have a certain way of looking at Job's suffering and reasoning through it. Okay, and then a guy by the name of Elihu comes along later and tries to sum everything up, what the friends are saying. So we have 3 rounds of debate, and this is round 1 tonight. Ding, ding, ding. I want us to look at Eliphaz first. He's in the first verse of chapter 4. You might want to have a Bible. If you have a Bible with you, you can follow along and see a little bit, but we're starting at Job 4:1. But I did want to mention Eliphaz the Temanite. This is an interesting thing. Again, maybe a little more than you want to know, but I'm really fascinated with this possibility. These are the names of Esau's sons. Esau was the twin brother of Jacob, the sons of Rebekah and Isaac, twin boys. Esau's sons were not promised. They didn't have as big a blessing as Isaac did, obviously. It was through Isaac that Israel would be born, that the nation of Israel would be born through Isaac and through Israel, through Jacob. But here are Esau's sons, and the first one mentioned is Eliphaz. Is this the same guy? He's the son of Esau's wife Ada, okay? And then you have the sons of Eliphaz, a fellow by the name of Teman. Is that a coincidence? Probably not. Probably not a coincidence. But that would mean that Job would have been contemporaneous with Esau and Jacob. Okay? Just a possibility, just something to think about. It would put it way back, yeah. But it would be after Abraham. It would be well after Abraham and wouldn't be near to the time of Noah. I remember hearing years ago that it might have been sometime, pre-Abraham. I don't think so. I don't think that anymore. I used to think that, but I don't anymore. So anyway, you have Esau's son Eliphaz. Is this Esau's son? I think there's a very good possibility. And you would have named a town or a region after your kids. I mean, look at all the street names around here and look at the town names. The people who settled here first, they got a chance to name the towns, and they did. So anyway, you see that. So here is where Teman is. You can see, I'll move the pointer around. Here's Philistia, where we would know Gaza is now, okay? But here's Israel, here's Judah, and here's Israel. This is the Dead Sea and the Jordan River here. But this is where we think Edom is. So it would be very close to Saudi Arabia. It would be very close to Arabia. Be on the northern tip, if maybe bordering Arabia. So that's where they came from. Unfortunately, we don't know where Uz is. So.
Edom and Esau the same person?
Yes, the nation of Edom. Edom is this area here. Edom means red, and Esau was red-headed, okay? You remember that? He was red-headed. Had a red complexion, and this is where we think that the Edomites in their nation stayed, okay? It's where they lived, where they settled. And this is during Isaiah's time, so this would have been some time after. But that gives you a general idea. Let's look at verse 2, okay?
If that really is the same person, then that definitely was before the Jewish nation.
Yes. Or yes. Yeah, because
Even before Moses.
Yeah, 4 centuries plus. 400 years before Moses. So that's really ancient. At the time of the patriarchs, we'd say it was at the time of the patriarchs, during Genesis, during the time of Genesis. Here's Eliphaz's opening remarks. I would not like to ever advise anyone to open a conversation with a hurting person by saying this. If someone ventures a word with you, will you be impatient? But who can keep from speaking? I can see Job bracing himself. So I'm going to have to be patient to listen to you. And you're going to tell me something that you have to tell me? Boy, oh boy. If someone says to you, will you listen to me if I speak to you? That'll put you on the defensive. Right, brace yourself, it's going to be bad. Probably a judgment's coming. At the very least, a negative statement is coming your way if someone introduces their remarks with that one. Well, that's how it all starts. This is the first of the friends' remarks, and they're all kind of like this. Eliphaz reveals, I think, a little bit of Job's situation, his history. This is the very next verse. He talks about how Job was an encourager. He instructed people. Think how you've instructed many on the ways of God, obviously. He was a teacher. He was an encourager. He was benevolent. He strengthened feeble hands, strengthened faltering knees. He was an encourager. And now he reveals the theme, pretty much, Eliphaz does, of the next 30 chapters, but various ways, permutations, if you will. He says, consider now, he's talking to Job, he says, consider now, who being innocent has ever perished? Where were the upright ever destroyed? As I have observed, those who plow evil and those who sow trouble reap it. Bam! You couldn't have hit Job over the head with a 2x4 any more brutally than that statement. Here you are, bleeding, bloody, a mess, sick as you can be, and Eliphaz says, well, this is kind of the way the world works, you know. People, yeah, right. Good people don't suffer like this. Good people don't. Those who plow evil, those who sow, they reap it. And then Eliphaz tells of a vision he had, all right? It kind of gives me the impression that Eliphaz is a little struck on himself, okay? But he says, he shares this with Job. He says, you know, a spirit glided past my face, and the hair on my body stood on end. It stopped, but I could not tell what it was. A form stood before my eyes, and I heard a hushed voice. Can a mortal be more righteous than God? Can even a strong man be more pure than his maker? He claims to have had some sort of vision in the night where a spirit glided by his face and whispered into his ear, can a human being be better than God?
You know, this almost make him think that this was a demon that was, you know, speaking to him.
Well, yet,
In a vision, it was like, this is not, you know what I'm saying, not a good spirit. I think verse 17, taken by itself, is absolutely 100% true. Well, it is, but this is something that Satan would be telling you, to me. It's like, so are you saying you're better than God?
There are, do you think there are things that are true that are better left unsaid in certain situations? I don't have no reason to think that Eliphaz is a liar. I think he may have experienced this. Okay, so we're just going to go we're just going to assume that he said this in good faith. Okay, that he had this vision, that something happened and he heard something. He heard from the Lord. And let's say it's the Lord. Okay, because it's absolutely true. This is absolutely 100% true. But is this the time to tell that story? To a man who is bleeding and sick as a dog and without hope in the world. Basically, he's lost his family. His wife told him to commit suicide. He's had everything happen that could happen to him. Yeah, yeah. Doug, you were going to say something?
It's probably not the only time he ever has expressed this. This is probably his lot in life to go around expressing himself in this way to other people.
To correct people. Yeah, yeah, yeah. He's given him what he needs. Eliphaz has given him. I've always said, be careful when you think somebody deserves to hear something, that you don't open your mouth when you think they deserve to hear it. I've learned that lesson the hard way and still do.
Kind of like the truth. There are cowards in truth who are afraid to tell the truth. There are people who don't want to take half truth, and there's those that think they know all truth.
Yes. And one can be just as damaging as the other. It's the truth. Yeah, it is. Eliphaz goes on. He says, hardship does not spring from the soil, nor does trouble sprout from the ground. You know what that means? He's saying there? He's saying suffering doesn't come from nowhere. There has to be a reason. You don't reap plants. You don't harvest fruit unless you planted a fruit seed or vegetables or whatever it is. He says, yeah, this is tough. He said, this is not an accident, Job. Hardship doesn't just come up from the soil. This is, trouble doesn't sprout from the ground. This is something that, he's responsible for.
That's why I was saying it the way I was saying it, because at this point, he's coming in, and just think of the other way. Think of Satan sitting there, and he's trying to make him doubt more, and want him to curse God. What's the better way to do it? You don't go in there and just, easily talk to him. You go in there and you get him to thinking, okay, it had to happen because I did something wrong. Well, then the first offense on that, or your first defense is, I didn't do nothing wrong. You start arguing with yourself even more, and then wondering about God even more to curse God.
You will find out that Job is pretty stubborn in his sense of righteousness.
I know.
You go to verse 8, he says, Eliphaz says, now, if I were you, I love the way the NIV translates that. It catches the sense of, if I were in your shoes, but you're not in his shoes. Okay? I got to tell you, I would love to teach a counseling class and use these as all the things you don't do when you're counseling people. But if I were you, I would appeal to God. I would lay my cause before him. That's probably true. He said, you need to tell God about this, lay your cause out, make your case. Verse 17, he then says, well, blessed is the one whom God corrects, so do not despise the discipline of the Almighty. So Eliphaz is saying, you're really getting something. God's giving you something here that you really need. It's interesting that in Hebrews it says that suffering is a good thing, is the discipline, to receive suffering as discipline of the Lord. Here, Eliphaz uses it more as a weapon, less than comfort, but more as a weapon against Job. I think again, good intentions, but God's disciplining you, Job. Better days are a-coming, because in a few verses he says, oh, you'll come to the grave in full vigor, like she's gathered in season. We've examined this, and it's true, so hear it and apply it to yourself. It's going to be better. You're going to go to the grave. You're going to die a healthy man, full vigor. It's not going to be like this. Oh, boy. So anyway, what if somebody told you that? What if in a time of suffering, if someone told you, you're going to be great. This is going to all turn out great. How would you receive that if you were in the depths of despair?
I think this is
Well,
where
we do tell people you're gonna be okay.
We do.
this reminds me of like the person that's really passive, and they've taken everything they can take, and all of a sudden then they become the breaking point. Make a long story short, this guy that when I was in one of the programs, he was talking about it. He talks about this guy and all these things bad happened to him, and all
Yeah.
And that's kind of what this
Yeah.
reminds me of. It would just automatic, I mean, it'd be hard not to snap.
Almost seems like Job is being pushed in closer to the precipice.
That's why I was saying, the reason I was saying it from the other side instead of the God's side, because that would be automatically would make you snap. I mean, it would, I'm not gonna say it'd make anybody snap. Most people could
Okay.
take it more.
Okay.
That would be it.
Now Deb brings up a good point. It's good to hear that you're going to be all right. I mean, that's not a bad thing.
That's just like saying that the clouds are not gonna stay here forever, the storm's gonna be over.
Right. It's not a bad thing. It just has to be hitting Job all wrong because of everything else that Eliphaz has said. In context. Right. Now, if he says this by itself, he says, you're going to be okay. I trust me. But having spent almost 2 chapters telling Job, you're an unrighteous guy and you're getting what you deserve from a righteous God, and then say, oh, you're going to be all right. It sounds contradictory. Now, how do you think Job answered?
I am innocent.
How would you answer? I'm innocent. How would you answer? Tell me what I've done wrong. Yeah. Show me. Okay. Any others? How would you answer that? What have I done? What have I done? Okay. Yeah, you have to be in the dark pit to understand that. Yeah. Well, here's Job. There's so much emotion here. He says, if only my anguish could be weighed and all my misery be placed on the scales. It would surely outweigh the sand of the seas. No wonder my words have been impetuous. The arrows of the Almighty are in me. My spirit drinks in their poison. God's terrors are marshaled against me. He is scared to death. He is not only discouraged with misery from his illness and his losses, but it says God's terrors are marshaled. What's that? What's he mean by that? What's he afraid of? God's going to make it worse, maybe? Anything else?
Maybe he feels that all of God's wrath is against him.
Okay.
But he doesn't want to say that it's God's fault.
Mm-hmm.
But he's feeling that, like we were talking the other night, and it in the very least, basically blaming God, but he's not trying to come out and say it's God's fault.
Oh, just wait. Just wait. We're not even going to finish tonight without seeing Job do some finger pointing at God before this is over. Yeah, he does some of that. Yeah. God's terrors. This whole thing, I think it's something we forget. It's not just him being sick and in despair. But quite often when you're sick and in despair and you don't see a way out, it's terrifying. Just that itself is terrifying. It scares you to death. What's going to happen to me? Yeah. You don't know why, but you don't know what's coming. Can it get worse? You wonder, is it going to get worse?
Well, we have salvation on our side today so that we can handle and deal with the things that we can't change.
Yes. Yeah.
And we would not want to go after God and blame him for it.
There certainly is, we certainly have insight that Job did not have. There's no question. We not only had insight, we have power. I mean, we have power, God's power to help us.
But even in his position and other people being there today where we feel like we're in his position, it's still not easy to reach out and ask God for help because of the human nature that's in us.
Okay. You mean
I think that
why do you think it's hard for us to ask for help from God?
I think some of us, we doubt our belief in him that he will be able to help us.
Oh, okay.
Because I've been in that situation where you were just so
Yeah.
I mean, you're begging God, been begging God, but yet you're not seeing anything different, it's getting worse. Not wanting to accept that I'm the reason why it's getting worse, is my choices and decisions I'm making. Because God's only gonna do so much, he's not gonna just wave a magic wand and, oh, you're done, okay, we'll put you back on the right road, here you go, here's all your house, here's the, it doesn't work that way. You've gotta fight for yourself, and it's hard to fight when you're down in the spirit like this.
There's also a sense, though, in Job's case, he didn't deserve this. He is not suffering because of mistakes he made. And he knows it. He knows that. That's what's scary.
A lot of times we don't wanna see the
See, that's what's scary. It is frightening to think, we don't ask God to help because we don't think we deserve it, number one. We wonder if God will do it. We don't doubt that God can do it, but we wonder if God will do it because we haven't deserved it. We deserve far worse. Job cannot understand this, and it scares him because he doesn't know why. He's done this self-evaluation. He can't figure out what's up. He can't figure out why he's going through this. Well, fasten your safety belt, because here goes Job. He turns loose. He says, oh, that I might have my request, that God would grant what I hope for, that God would be willing to crush me, to let loose his hand and cut off my life. Then I would still have this consolation, my joy in unrelenting pain, that I had not denied the words of the Holy One. Let me interpret this. He wants to die, but the reason he wants to die right away is because he doesn't know how much longer he can hold out and not deny God. Did you notice that? He said, I would still have this consolation. If I died, he says, I'd have this consolation, my joy, that I had not denied the words of the Holy One. If I die right away, then I won't blaspheme God. Okay? I won't sin against God. He says, that's the reason I want to die. That is really something. I mean, that's not Job saying, I want to be done with this suffering. By the way, he says that numerous times. This is part of the complexity of his grief. He says, I just don't want to say anything to sin against God. I don't want to blaspheme. I don't want to curse God through my suffering. He says, I would know that if I died now, I would die with a clear conscience, not having sinned against God. I think there's a certain amount of nobility to that. He said in verses 11 through 13, and I think these are some of the most lament-filled words in all of Scripture, other than maybe, my God, why have you forsaken me? But these are pretty bad. What strength do I have that I should still hope? What prospects that I should be patient? What have I got to look forward to? Do I have the strength of stone? Is my flesh bronze? Am I thick-skinned? Am I tough enough to handle this? Is my heart tough enough? Do I have any power to help myself now that success has been driven from me? And then he describes his physical condition. Look at this. This is him self-describing, self-diagnosing, if you will. He says, when I lay down, I think, how long before I get up? You ever gone to bed like that? Especially people that have chronic pain, well, I got to lay down. I got to try to get some sleep. So Job says, well, how long before I get up? He's looking at his watch. Of course, they didn't have watches then, but that drags on. He says, and I toss and turn until dawn. My body is clothed with worms and scabs. My skin is broken and festering. My days are swifter than a weaver's shuttle, and they come to an end without hope. In other words, my life is slipping away from me quickly. A weaver's shuttle would go fairly quickly. Back in the day, the shuttle goes back and forth through those threads. He said, they come to an end without hope. Remember, O God, this prayer is that my life is but a breath. My eyes will never see happiness again. I'm quite sure that James the brother of Jesus, when he wrote in his epistle that he was thinking of what Job said centuries before. Your life is but a breath. I am quite sure James was thinking of this when he was thinking of Job's remarks here. And then he addresses God. He takes Eliphaz's advice, and he takes some things up with God. He says, when I think my bed will comfort me and my couch will ease my complaint, even then you frighten me with dreams and terrify me with visions. He can't even go to sleep at night. He's imagining the worst things that could possibly happen, so that I prefer strangling and death rather than this body of mine. I despise my life. I would not live forever. Let me alone. My days have no meaning. I have known people who have said these words, in effect, who suffered with cancer or heart disease or dying. They'll say, I would prefer to die. And they mean it. And it upsets families when they hear it. It just sends some families into such great grief. And then I end up going over and comforting them and saying, if I were in that position, I would probably say the same thing. People are not being unreasonable when they consider that death is a release. And that's what Job's looking at here. He says, I despise my life. I hate my life. This is different than a teenager saying that, by the way. I hear teenagers say, I hate my life. Well, that's not like Job, okay? Let me alone. My days have no meaning. He's talking to God, not his friends, not here. He's talking to God. Leave me alone. Ooh. What is mankind that you make so much of them, that you give them so much attention? Why are you paying attention to me? To afflict me like this, is Job's point. That you examine them every morning and test them every moment. Will you never look away from me or let me alone even for an instant? Again, he's speaking to God. If I have sinned, what have I done to you? You who see everything we do. Why have you made me your target? Have I become a burden to you? Why do you not pardon my offenses and forgive my sins? You're holding a grudge. God, what's up? For soon I will soon lie down in the dust. You will search for me, but I will be no more. Are there some things in this that make you a little uncomfortable, that Job said these things? Deb's nodding her head. I was uncomfortable. What were some of the things that... Brutally honest with God? Think God can't handle our toughest questions?
You may be your target.
Yeah, why am I a target?
If I have sinned, what have I done to you?
Yeah. That's almost like, is this personal, Lord? Is this personal? Actually, it is personal. But the Lord, it's Satan who's made it personal. He said, Job just serves you because you made him rich. You've made him happy. Take away his riches and his happiness. He'll curse you. It's like you said last week, Jerry, it's not, Job loves the blessings. He doesn't love the blesser like he loves the blessings. And it is personal. But of course, God doesn't answer him at this point. And God doesn't answer him at all as to any of these questions. He does. He questions him. Yep. Why are you paying attention to me? This is the depth of despair. This is the depth. Any other insights or questions? Or I actually found most of this uncomfortable reading. Because of, I think we all tend not to be as honest as maybe we ought to be in our prayers with God. And the fact is, God already knows your heart. So you ought to just go ahead and tell him when you're disappointed or disgusted or disillusioned, that you tell him. Because Job sure did. And Job did not strike him with lightning. He let him have his complaints. God didn't strike him, right? Then Bildad speaks. Bildad the Shuhite. Bildad, the name Bildad means son of contention in Hebrew. So he might have belonged by the way, there's a passage in Genesis 25, verse 2, where Abraham has a son by the name of Shua. That's Genesis 25, 2. And the Shuhite would have been a descendant of, this was Abraham. See, after Sarah died, he had several children by his next wife, Keturah. One of those children was named Shua, from whom the Shuhite people would have come. So it would have been a descendant. And again, it seems if Eliphaz is somebody related to Esau, like 2 generations, okay, maybe 1 generation from Esau, it's very possible that a descendant of Abraham, this guy could be from that tribe, from that group of people. So anyway, just a thought. But it was by his second wife, Keturah. And Bildad turns up the heat, okay? He just sharpens the edge just a little more when he talks to Job. He says, how long will you say such things? Your words are a blustering wind. Does God pervert justice? Does the Almighty pervert what is right? When your children sinned against him, he gave them over to the penalty of their sin. Well, that was a kind thing to say.
I don't want him as a friend.
No, Bildad sharpens his arrow. He says, you know that windstorm that killed your kids? They had it coming. What? The only thing I think that kept Job from probably physically attacking him was he was so sick that he couldn't move much. Because I would have, that gets under my skin to hear that statement. But then he calls him a blustering wind. Your words are you're windy. You're windy. But God, he doesn't pervert justice. He does what's right. He keeps going. But if you will seek God earnestly and plead with the Almighty, if you are pure and upright, even now he will rouse himself on your behalf and restore you to your prosperous state. Your beginnings will seem humble, so prosperous will your future be. He says, your future looks good. If you can get God to restore you, again, still the same idea, you're suffering because you're not good. You're really unrighteous. Yes, something definitely wrong. Bildad keeps up. Surely God does not reject one who is blameless or strengthen the hands of evildoers. He will yet fill your mouth with laughter and your lips with shouts of joy. I said this last week, it sure sounds like Joel Osteen's school of doctrine. I mean, that God favors you, and that if you are doing right, you will live healthy, happy, rich. He uses the word favor a lot. I do listen to Joel. Favored life. You'll live a favored life. God favors his people. He does. But sometimes things like this happen. And so here's Bildad talking like Joel Osteen. All will be well. Your future will be great if you can just get through this. I think there's some things that Bildad said that are true. He does not reject those who are blameless. In fact, Job's suffering has nothing to do with God rejecting Job at all. Has nothing to do with that. His suffering had nothing to do with his standing with God. In fact, knowing what we know now, it was because of his good standing that he was suffering. It's totally turned on its head here. So there were things that Bildad said that are true. If you'll seek God earnestly, well, you need to seek God, obviously. Plead with the Almighty, all right? And he will restore you. I don't know about all that. I don't know if Bildad had any special insights, but he's got it based on the fact that if you'll just repent and plead with God, you'll turn out all right. Everything will be all right. And here's Job's reply in chapter 9. Indeed, I know this is true. He admits that part's true. But how can mere mortals prove their innocence before God? Though they wished to dispute with him, they couldn't answer him 1 time out of 1,000. His wisdom is profound. His power is vast. Who has resisted him and come out unscathed? Job says, I'm really not smart enough to dispute with God about my innocence. I'm just not smart enough. His vast wisdom, his power, I can't dispute with him. If God came back with something, if I made my case and God came back with something, I wouldn't be able to answer him. That's true. God knows everything. Job keeps on. He says, even if I summoned him and he responded, I do not believe he would give me a hearing. That's what discouragement and despair does to you. You don't think God will hear you. God's not listening to me. Job says, God's not going to listen to me. He would crush me with a storm and multiply my wounds for no reason. He would not let me catch my breath, but would overwhelm me with misery. Boy, that is not fair to the God of heaven. He's saying that God is a sadist. He would just hurt me worse than I'm already hurting. This is a man in despair, okay? This is not an unrighteous man. This is a righteous man who doesn't have any answers. And he's reasoning through it. Although I am blameless, I have no concern for myself. I despise my own life. You'll hear that a lot in the book of Job. Okay, I hate my life. But I'm blameless, he says, and he continues to claim his blamelessness. Job, like these other guys, is locked into this idea that a person suffers because they sin. He needs to declare his innocence because he believes his innocence is tied to his well-being. And that's what they're all telling him. And he believes it. He just can't make sense of it. He can't make sense of it. And so here are these three accusing friends as witnesses against him. He talks to the Lord. Here, Job replies here, Job 10. He says, you bring new witnesses against me and increase your anger toward me. Your forces come against me wave upon wave. These are my friends here. These are the witnesses to my unrighteousness, my alleged unrighteousness. You've sent me these people, my friends, who are, if I got friends like these, I don't need enemies. Why then did you bring me out of the womb? So now he's going back to cursing the day of his birth. I wish I died before any eye saw me. If only I'd never come into being or been carried straight from the womb to the grave. Are not my few days almost over? Turn away from me so I can have a moment's joy. He's speaking to his friends. He's speaking to Bildad. He's telling them, please go away. You're not just not helping me, you're hurting me. Would you please leave me alone? Okay. Give me some peace before I die. Then Zophar comes, and he turns up the heat. As if you thought Bildad couldn't turn up the heat any hotter, Zophar does. In Job 11, you say to God, this is Zophar, my beliefs are flawless and I'm pure in your sight. Oh, how I wish that God would speak, that he would open his lips against you and disclose to you the secrets of wisdom. For true wisdom has two sides. Know this, God has even forgotten some of your sin. You should be suffering worse, Job. He's already forgiven you for some of your stuff. Zophar is just going after. He's all in. He's doubling down on the idea that you are a dirty, low-down, dirty dog sinner. And that's the reason you're suffering, because God has forgiven you of a lot of stuff. Surely he recognizes deceivers. You're a liar, Job. You're just self-deceived and you're deceiving everybody else. You've got a wicked heart. And when he sees evil, does he not take note? He's looking at Job with this. If you put away the sin that's in your hand and allow no evil to dwell in your tent. And then Job replies, I won't go into all the, Zophar just goes on, by the way. If you want to read it, you can. It's discouraging. So Job is totally exasperated. Get to chapter 12. He replies, doubtless, you are the only people who matter, and wisdom will die with you. I think it already had died. There wasn't a whole lot of wisdom going on. But I have a mind as well as you. I'm not inferior to you. Who does not know all these things? Don't insult me by telling me something I don't already know. I'm just as good as you. Don't stand there pointing your finger at me, blaming me for my sin. And then he says, I become a laughingstock to my friends. Though I called on God and he answered, a mere laughingstock, though righteous and blameless. People are laughing about him, about his suffering. Isn't it like some people to rejoice over the fall of the rich and the well-to-do. So he got what he was coming. He got it. And so he's being laughed about. Not the least of which is these three friends. He's talking in their presence. They're friends of his. They've come from some distance, and he's saying, you are laughing at me. You're making sport of me. I've called on God, and here I am, God. I'm a laughingstock to even my friends, even though I'm righteous. Those who are at ease have contempt for misfortune, as the fate of those whose feet are slipping. The tents of marauders are undisturbed, and those who provoke God are secure, those God has in his hand. He's saying this is the problem. This is the problem of all of us for those that suffer and don't deserve it. He said, you've got people who suffer misfortune for no reason. He said, the tents of marauders, thieves, and robbers, why, they're fine. They're safe and secure, while the righteous suffer. And so Job goes on the attack. He says, you, however, smear me with lies. You are worthless physicians. All of you. If only you would be altogether silent. For you, that would be wisdom. Would it turn out well if he examined you? He turns his fingers back to them. Says, would it be right with you? Are you right with God? You telling me I'm not right with God. Are you? Could you deceive him as you might deceive a mortal, like you're deceiving me? Are you so good, looking down your long, bony nose at me? Could you endure such judgment from God yourself? He would surely call you to account if you secretly showed partiality. And then he said this, in this moment of crystal clear beauty, he says, though he slay me, yet will I hope in him. Even though God, he said, if God kills me, I'm still hoping in him, no matter what happens. I think this is a pivotal moment for Job. Now, he's not done complaining, but like the waves of emotion that come upon people who suffer, you have your moments when things are better than others, when you see more clearly than other times. You're not seeing blackness all the time. You'll see bright sunshine for just a moment, and then it goes away. But this is one of these bright moments of sunshine where he says, I'm going to trust God even if it kills me. If he kills me, I'm still hoping in him, no matter what happens. I will surely defend my ways to his face, though. So I'm righteous. Only grant me these two things, God, and then I won't hide from you. Withdraw your hand from me and stop frightening me with your terrors. How many wrongs and sins have I committed? Show me my offense and my sin. Chapter 14, and we'll finish up here. This is, I want you to note Job's notions about the afterlife. He said, but a man dies and is laid low. He breathes his last and is no more. As the water of a lake dries up on a riverbed, becomes parched and dry, so he lies down and does not rise till the heavens are no more. People will not awake or be roused from their sleep. If only you would hide me in the grave and conceal me till your anger is past. If only you would set me a time and then remember me. When you're over your anger, Lord, just go ahead and commit me to the grave. And then when it comes, he's speaking of resurrection here. Job had some notion of the resurrection of the dead. He said, then raise me up, you'd remember me. He says, if someone dies, will they live again? Ask the question. All the days of my hard service, I will wait for my renewal to come. There was some notion in the Jewish mind, in the ancient mind, that God was one day going to resurrect the dead. And I think it's seen in the words of Job. You will call and I will answer you. You will long for the creature your hands have made. What a beautiful statement. Wow. Let that be spoken at my funeral and all of our funerals, that God will call us one day in a resurrection moment and bring us to himself, because that's what he's always wanted to do. Overall, what are some of the things that have been conveyed in this tonight? overall what's been conveyed, you think?
With his friends, I think he sinned, there's something going on,
Ah.
it's his fault.
Yep, they think it's his fault. Yep, somehow or another, it's your fault. They don't know what it is,
That's still,
but they're sure it is.
still with you, a lot of people today.
Well, sure it is. Yeah.
You got what you deserve.
Uh-huh. Yep. If you have, I find it interesting that people who, well, I'll give you an example. Somebody with liver disease. What's your first thought? They're drinkers. Man, there's a lot of people that never take a drink that have liver disease. Right. Yeah. What about lung cancer? Say lung cancer. They smoke themselves. Well, not everybody who smokes has lung cancer, or not everybody that has lung cancer smokes. It works both ways. Now, there are definitely health dangers to tobacco use and to alcohol, overuse of alcohol. Absolutely, there are dangers, but I'm saying is that we sometimes stereotype people, right? We jump to a conclusion that that's what's going on when we really don't know. We don't really know. Yeah, yeah, lived to be 110. I know. Yep. Certainly. Sometimes it just happens. It's genetic or whatever. Sometimes it just happens. Maybe you live in a community where the water's polluted, you know. But we could jump to a conclusion, an incorrect conclusion sometimes. I think it's human nature to try to explain. It gives coherence to our world, okay? It gives us, when something happens, we want to know why. That's natural. And so, as Linda said, the conclusion of the friends was, Job, you're a sinner. That's the only way this makes sense. And Job says, it doesn't make sense because I'm not unrighteous. So it doesn't make sense. And that it doesn't make sense is one of God's terrors, he calls it. That's the terrifying thing about this. This is a side of God Job had never, ever seen. This was God going to allow this to happen when his life had been so prosperous. Very few bumps in the road. I'm sure he had challenges, okay? I'm not saying he did, living his life. No one who builds a fortune like he did, they all have challenges. But he'd never had one like this. And this terrified him. And he didn't know what to make of it. So, all right.
Friend of mine had a preacher in Texas. He could tell a story. I read one time one of the books he wrote, talked about there was this lady growing up in the neighborhood, and she lost a daughter to a car wreck, a son in Vietnam, and her husband died. And next Sunday after her husband died, she was sitting in church praising God, lifting her head because he felt confident.
Mhm.
How could she do that? With all the misery that's in her, how could she do that? He said she was just still had joy.
Yeah.
You know, it's like look at the prison when Paul and them was in prison and they're singing joyous songs to God.
Yes.
Most people in prison, I'm sorry, ain't sitting there singing joyous songs to God.
No, and there's every possibility they would have been killed the next morning, executed the next morning.
And that may be why they were so joyous.
I said, we're about to meet God.
They knew that they were going when it was over.
Yes.
That if you kill me, you're not killing God.
Mm-hmm.
You're taking the mortal, but not the immortal.
That's right. All right. Thank you. We covered 11 chapters tonight. Man, did we cover them.